swing vote on the nation's divided high court calls it quits. Could abortion rights and same-sex marriage face renewed conservative challenge with the retirement of Anthony Kennedy? Meantime, a federal judge orders reunification of immigrant families fractured on the border. As yet another reform bill sputters and dies in Congress, when will Americans agree on who can come and who cannot? And in the city of Annapolis, a gunman massacres 4 journalists and a co-worker. Has the president's open malice towards the media put a target on every reporter's back? I'm Greg Grugan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Let's greet them. Starting us off, Republican strategist Jessica Colon. Next up, progressive commentator and attorney Nyanza Moore. In the 3 spot, Carmen Roe, also a well-regarded Houston lawyer. Batting cleanup, Marcus Davis, radio host of Sunday Morning Live. Next up, businessman, columnist, and former Kemah mayor Bill King. And closing us out on the hot corner, Chicano activist and educator Tony Diaz. Let's begin. It was a development which triggered a sudden seismic shift in America's judicial landscape, igniting both elation and anguish. After 3 decades on the Supreme Court, Justice Anthony Kennedy, the so-called swing vote, announced his retirement. The Reagan appointee, who confounded conservatives with progressive votes on abortion rights, capital punishment, and gay marriage, will, with his departure, give the Republican president a second appointment in as many years and a clear opportunity to stack the high court with right-leaning jurists. Hand-wringing liberals have spent the week in near panic, posing the question, could Roe versus Wade actually be reversed? Liberal comedian Stephen Colbert went further, saying, quote, enjoy your gay marriages now because as of August 1st, you're going back to being roommates. President Trump says a nomination will come sooner rather than later and has called for confirmation before the midterms.
And I'm very honored that he chose to do it during my term in office because he felt confident in me to make the right choice and carry on his great legacy.
Okay, panel, what is your point? I'm starting with attorney Nyanza Moore.
Yes, thank you for saying attorney Nyanza Moore. I could not be more happy to be an attorney at this point. I believe in this situation, Donald Trump is using his presidency as yet another way to try to pretend that the Supreme Court justice is actually doing something in favor of Donald, when actually being the swing vote in those major decisions, you know, is something that conservatives have long been upset about, not winning when it comes to gay marriage. And, you know, even Roe versus Wade, and I know that some of my panelists are very, very anti-women's liberation and women's rights as far as pro-choice. But at the same time, I do not believe that if Donald Trump chooses another conservative that will then swing the court all the way to the right, that it will stand. Because when the Democrats come into power, this court has changed in number 3 different times. It's gone from 6 to 9 to 6 to whatever. So now at this time, if the Republicans think that they can stack this court so one-sided so that we're set for another 30 years going in reverse, trying to reverse Roe versus Wade, and maybe even trying to go back to Plessy versus Ferguson, if you all know when a black man was considered 3/4 of a man, or even trying to undo Brown versus the Board of Education, what else will they do? I believe that Mitch McConnell at this juncture is looking in the mirror thinking, do as I say, not as I do. And I do not believe the Democrats are so weak that they would actually let this happen. And I believe if the Republicans do what they want to do, the Democrats will take over at the midterms and add numbers to the court to even the balance of the scales or take it over completely.
Jessica Colon, I wish I were reading your text messages this week because I'm sure they're blowing up. What's your read on this sudden vacancy on the court?
Well, what an amazing week at the Supreme Court. They save opinions. You know, you always hear about the opinions that come at the close of summer, you know, here in late June. And they rolled out opinions this week that were incredible victories for conservative issues. They upheld our redistricting maps here in Texas. They told a crisis pregnancy center you have freedom of speech. They told union members you don't have to pay dues to go toward candidates that you don't support. Stunning, stunning decisions that came out of the Supreme Court this week. And then with the drama of Kennedy saying that he is going to retire, and not just in a long period of time, next month. is just remarkable drama out of SCOTUS this week. With Kennedy obviously opening up a vacancy, we have an amazing short list of people. Several Texans are on that list. Many whom have already been vetted, whether for Circuit Court of Appeals seats or for the U.S. Supreme Court itself. So we're incredibly optimistic about the choices that are coming forward. There are no surprises. This list has been intact since the presidential election, and it has been vetted through, Federalist Society and amazing legal leaders in Washington. So we are waiting. July 9th is the date that we're going to hear the president's choice, and this will be affirmed this fall, and we will have an incredible new Supreme Court justice here before the midterm elections.
It is no accident that Carmen Roe is on this panel today, because she spends her days in the trenches of our courts here in Texas. Carmen, what is your read, and what was the read from your fellow counselors down at the courthouse?
Well, you're absolutely right. I think everybody met this decision with a lot of dismay, disappointment, and frustration, and doom and despair about what the future holds. I'll tell you, for me personally, though, the fix was in. We knew this was going to happen. It's obvious it was planned out. As the panel's already said, the president's vetted people in anticipation of this, and it's obvious that Justice Kennedy cooperated with this process. So if you believe in Kennedy and you believe that he has a legacy that he wants to ensure goes on into the future, I think that, all this doom and despair might be a little premature. I remain, maybe naively, but optimistic that we're going to get something that's a little more down the middle, maybe not as right as what everybody is expecting.
Really?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Tony, want to hear from you.
This is heartbreaking, because this should be the theme for the show. Justice is stacked.
Right.
It's a racket. Justice is rigged. Yeah, I know. I'm glad you're laughing, because you're union busters.
Hold on.
So, I mean, we have definitely said that Republicans don't like unions, so they busted the unions. Republicans said they don't like gay marriage, they're going to bust that. Republicans seem to not like the undocumented. Let's see how they're going to get treated in this future America. For everybody watching right now, we really do have to vote, because unless you come in, and we have to win by huge numbers, because we also learned from the last election that it's not enough to have most of the votes. So this really is a heartbreaking moment for America, because we're revealing, I guess, the American dream is over. It's the American racket.
We're going to talk more about that in a second. I'm going to go quickly to Marcus Davis, save a little time for Bill on the tail end.
Yeah, just a little.
I got to correct what it is.
So, I keep hearing swing vote, swing vote, swing vote, and not so much, right? I mean, his votes, for the most part, 85% of his votes were conservative, right? You have 2 or 3 of the biggies, so it's not really a big deal that the court was already leaning that way. But that's the important part. This idea that we're okay with making our court system partisan is disgusting, be it Democrat or Republican. We are now literally trying to make sure that we have an unbalanced court system. And that is contrary to what the founding fathers intended. They created 3 branches of power for balance. And they intended the Supreme Court to be part of the balance in the United States of America. And this idea that Americans are okay with making our courts partisan is ridiculous. The other part is this shaming by the Democratic Party on people who stayed at home or voted third party. Shame on the Democratic Party for being a piss-poor party that they could not outperform a reality TV star.
We'll come back to that. Final word, Bill.
I'm a little more in Carmen's camp. I think this will shift the court slightly to the right. I don't think it's going to be that dramatic. I don't think Roe versus Wade is going to be repealed.
Do you anticipate a big fight in the Senate? Confirmation.
There's no fight to be had. They've got the votes. They'll get it done before the midterm. The question will be whether or not whether this moves the needle in the midterms and in the 2020 elections. Republicans were very motivated by the fact that everybody knew there were going to be 2 or 3 Supreme Court nominees for the next president. And I think they really focused on that and made that part of the message. Democrats didn't.
We're going to talk about it more. Okay, when we come back, a federal judge has 0 tolerance for the breakup of immigrant families on the border. The ongoing fallout is on the table when we return.